You should talk about this poem. What will you tell us then?
This poem is from his first poetry book. Hussein started with just poetry and wrote poetry for so long, but it was misunderstood maybe, and so he had to explain himself in his other books and his novels. And so for long poetry was his focus, but then he had to, tell it. It wasn't enough to, just like pack it up in poetry.
But what about the poem, The Metamorphosis?
What about it?
The context? Is it the occupation? Is it, what does it mean?
It kind of explains itself. It's the search for something other than anything familiar.
Yeah.
Basically. So whatever you answer, the answer is the other thing.
Motforestillinger is one of the first or the beginning poetry of Hussein, and Hussein has a journey of contributing his poetry, and he was part of his keys of developing his poetry is to listening to his own dreams. And part of this poem is it came to his dream, and he was always listening to the daily life and what's happening in his reality, and developing this in his technique of listening and recording and analyzing his dream. And one of these metaphors is part of this journey that he has, or this technique he has developed. And of course, it's not only something that he wanted to produce as a poetry, but it's also trying to develop the concept of why he wanted to be a poet and how he could be different if developing the Arab poetry. And especially if we're talking about his way of reflecting the reality, he's always taking the edge of what he would like to say. And I think this is my own reading and also part of my dialogue with him. It's make the
extremes.
The extreme of reflecting the reality.
Yeah, he says something that somewhere that to lose realization. Again, that when he lost his way, he takes away the I and the my, and things are sort of their own thing. Then he can describe it in a That's
I think he's one of the poets that he really loses himself into art, and he took himself to the really edge of discovering what's beyond the reality and come back and tell us what he discovered, and which is literary by conscious, of course. And he has a book or a text called the emptiness which sees the details. And he talks about the thing that it's ordinary for people, but it's not. It's our the details that makes life.
And in this poem he has, I read maybe Israel is the context, or he has a sort of desire for a pleasure that is known to have no limits, and a different water that nourish you and offers you another, and the two, free as eagles, and he sort of frees himself from the context.
Yes, exactly.
In that poem.
That's exactly what's it's the main point of the Blue Light book. It's about emptiness yourself in order to input with new inputs, and another thing, it's the place. It doesn't matter. He says it doesn't matter the place. It's the experience in this place, whatever it was, Palestine or Norway or America, whatever. It's your experience that created the place, and it created your experience within this place.
And he also says something about the freedom you have within the limits,
Yes.
sort of, and you always have freedom within the limits of your time.
Yeah, I think he tried to say that there is no limits for a human being either to be free or to be abandoned. So he has to break all these limits as a person, as a poet, and as a politician. To say something, you have to break all the limits.
Yeah. And he says a wide imagination is necessary in a narrow world.
Yes.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, maybe we should. He had 16 books, correct?
Yes, it's he wasn't really. Most of his books were published after his death. He wasn't fond of fame. He wanted to leave athar. It's a word in Arabic. It says that he wanted to leave this journey in the earth with something is value. So he was traveling, really traveling, physically traveling, and traveling in his work. And I think all the people who lived with him, they knew that he produced through dialogue, through lectures, through talks, more than what he's had written. So I think he was trying to leave something for us to learn about us rather than being famous.
Yeah.
So many people, I think, who read, especially young generation, he always said that I write for the future. So I can see the future. So he would be misunderstood in his age, but now he's the main poet for the young generation. So we still discover what he's writing.
Also, I'd like to add that his focus was more on his life, on actual life other than fame. And so that's why he never cared much for fame. He cared more about writing the poem in the right way, and then didn't care what happened to the poem, as long as he did write it. Which is why his fame, it's not that he wasn't famous, it's that his fame took and will take more time, but eventually will be on a bigger scale. And so I think this is just the beginning, because today is the first day that his poetry is read in other than Arabic today. And so this might be the beginning, and we've always known that it will one day be bigger, but we don't know when. And we're working slowly on that.
Yeah, this is a real poet we're talking about, and I hope he will be translated to Norwegian. I will talk about. I will be an ambassador. This title of this festival, Motforestillinger. This is sort of Norwegian play with words, because to stand up and to say against is what we call modig. It's courage. Courage. Yeah. brave. And to be brave in Norwegian is the same word as to say against. And Motforestilling is, there are at least 2 different types of forestilling in your country. It's the Israeli story, and it's the many small stories of the people in Palestine. And that was poets' work from the people. Yeah. And so it's a very good title of this festival, and it takes a lot of courage to say against.
But the counterparts.
Yeah.
Counter.
Yeah. And that's what poets have. This is the language of a poet, to sort of say against the language that are sort of the daily language that we use. We have to have another language, and he has this. I think we should read the 3rd poem.